There couldn't be a shoe handed out, it couldn't be produced without us giving our very best in every single aspect of its making. From my gut feeling, the word to describe it would be incorruptibility. It's also synonymously for how I would describe my grandfather. But I think it's not only this strong in me because I worked alongside him for such a long time and his demeanor passed on to me, but also something representing our family on a larger scale. And this incorruptibility has a lot of space for epithets around it, be it in the quality, in the preservation of our most sacred asset, our knowledge. I believe there's a lot of space around it. For example, no changes in direction that are too radical. There's a certain linearity in this. So I would always add this to the family name, this word, incorruptible. The shoe itself is a representative or mirrors our personality essentially. It coddles our health, supports our health, but it is a unique product. A product just as unique as the person wearing it. I believe that one can see this in a bit of a bigger picture, though as the shoe originally only had a logical protective function. It's simply too dangerous to walk unprotected on whatever ground, and protection from too much heat or too much cold. So, frankly, it is an utterly pragmatic product, but one that's more than clothing only. After all, the foot is exposed to many dangers. We could, should, must rethink here and give what and wrap into what this simply incredible body part really needs. A shoe is not a piece of clothing, that's just one of its many functions. So when looking at our craft, one has to understand that a personality is represented and portrayed in the last, and it has an additional function. We must give this wonderful body part foot nothing but the best. And this is why this craft, I would say, is so very difficult, because with this complexity, it gives this thing, the last, so many different tasks. It's almost incomprehensible that inwardly we give the foot this incredible feeling of being held firmly, yet with outstanding freedom of being indulged and also treated in the best way possible with greatest respect. And to the outer world, we're to represent a personality. This doesn't necessarily have to match 1000%. In an ideal case it does, but it doesn't have to be. And then we can still add to this by saying that we want to add a message to all of this too. A message we might discuss together, or even one we as master craftsmen choose and then add. This can be done by communication via color, communication via model, that all of this is embodied in a piece of wood with completely different inwardly and outwardly functions, even with me saying it now, is something I find difficult to comprehend. But it's what makes the complexity of the task and underlines the unbelievable amount of knowledge we need, and even more still the fine-tuned feeling and incredible institution we need to follow to find the right balance. Because everyone wearing shoes knows, at the end of the day, with a product like the product shoe, a millimeter can decide if something feels great or causes pain. I'm very aware of and have got a great sense of duty towards our tradition that was imposed on me, but I've also got incredible creativity and capacities to look ahead into the future, to consider the place that craftsmanship will take in that future. And I believe craftsmanship to be a fundamental pillar of human existence, an integral part to describe not only this way of life, it is the most autonomous thing we know, as well as the most assertive thing about being human, that we're capable of taking a natural material and turn it into a product this useful by using knowledge, our brains, and in this case, our hands. I cannot think of anything surpassing this model. With shoes, we're in the lucky position to have a product that is always a useful product, but there are so many fabulous crafts, and like I said, I believe this to be a wonderful and essential part of being human, one that needs to be preserved, otherwise we'll lose even more of our balance. The environment in which these shoes are made is in a space that leaves enough room to really get the full focus and utmost concentration on this process. I'm presented with a foot that's so individual, so personal, that it repels measuring up to any norm, and I have to give it the entirety of my sensorium, be it the person reaching out to get into contact with the client, the one starting the relationship, so to say, or every single craftsman or woman involved in the process. All have to have their senses ready, requested for the task. There's probably no second material that touches up with our most primal instincts the way leather does. After all, we've lived on and with leather for millennia already. We've slept in tents made from leather, clothed ourselves in leather, covered and shielded us, warmed us up, and fed on leather. We needed to use it with care. The animals we aggregate to kill for ourselves are oftentimes much stronger than we are. This means that this power of attraction towards them is indelible, prominent in us, and those of us working with it in a form as pure and unadulterated as in the materials we use experience this pull all the more. When touching a hide, one cannot resist sensing it being not just a living material, but also an individual behind it. And this personality is outright perceptible. And it's also a great art behind selecting the right material from all available skins to concatenate with the wearer's personality. When talking about this treasure trove of leather and about us being a company thinking in a sustainable and economical way and knowing about just how valuable this raw material is, it becomes very clear that we try to reduce wasting it. Everyone working with leather knows that things have changed in the fine setting of pace in which the animals grow, the time animals have to recuperate, and the manner hides are tanned nowadays. So when cutting the leather pieces from the hide, there are only certain parts we can use. In a way, every single shoe model has its own position in a hide. Since the early 90s, the circumstances were that I recognized more and more leather was going to waste. And I found this terrible and couldn't resist considering what to do with all that scrap leather. Leather that wasn't bad or inferior really, just not good enough anymore for the highest of all products, our shoes. And so despite us being neither saddlers, nor bag makers or belt makers, we decided to make things from these leather parts that we could actually make using our sewing machines and tools. And so we're simply inspired by, say, an old saddle cleaning kit for horses we found, that we thought we could build something similar to it, a shoe care kit. Then we went a little further, still thinking it would be quite nice to have a belt made from the same leather as the shoes. Over the years it took to get into the cutting of the leathers, a role I took over from my grandfather, I discovered more and more these areas in the skin that were suited for small leather goods. I believe that what's at heart of this is the idea that we should be cautious to always have some sort of item made from leather in our lives. Even those who might not be interested in these kind of shoes or who simply cannot splurge this kind of money will find joy in a leather key tea fob, made from a natural leather that propagates this vibrancy that allows for the development of a beautiful patina over time, from an animal that suits one's personality. So, in a way, one could or should always have something made from leather on one. I'm a firm supporter of this idea, of following this primal instinct. Our team is a motley mixed group of different characters. The previously prominent preconception of what kind of traits a craftsman or woman needs are in a state of flux. That's very obvious. It's not necessarily the introverted person completely devoured by his work, unapproachable or irresponsive person, but they are all personalities that we hope to be mature enough and authentic, having a good sense of themselves without pretending to be something they're not. For being authentic allows for more space for this high sensitivity we're looking for. That's what we look for most. That aside, we really love this fantastic variety of nationalities, of personalities, also of characters in general. We've really got an array of people here, from introverted to extroverted craftspeople. And it's this contagion of differences that's the most beautiful thing. That's one of the reasons we brought our lunch table into life, so we'd have a place to gather after our 2-hour sessions we call focus blocks, when we're all highly concentrated on our tasks. But there are certain things that were unfathomable back in the days, that we're having a laugh, for example, or someone sneezing so loud that the entire workshop is in the know, and these kinds of things. That's the new breath of fresh air we've won now. It wasn't quite as easy to produce excellent results in spite of these differences of people at first. The structure this company was built in and the manner this construction was originally forged have changed though, especially on this level of artisans. And this is very important, that I remain to be an example of the craft, an instructor that I too stay in the loop. This means I have to be close to the craft.
Schön. In die Grube muss diese Pelotte reinkommen. Relativ steil. Und dann geht sie wirklich ganz zart verlaufen und hinten ganz flach. Ja. Und hier auf der Seite, das hast du bei den anderen auch, das hier richtig wie eine Mulde machen. Also das ist alles ganz zart. Das geht nicht sozusagen 2 Seiten hinunter, sondern das ist wie eine Grube.
We've got this very prudent saying that one shouldn't be so engaged with one's own feet, obtain such an awareness of them that one ceases to be tickly when touched. Being tickly means nothing else than having an untrained sensorium. Our hands and feet are near enough identical anatomically speaking, with the feet having 2 extra bones. Due to the continued use of our hands, we've developed a very delicate sense of touch, and there's a certain charm to being tickled on the hands, an exuberant awareness of our senses. But with our feet, we're almost hysterical, allowing hardly any contact. And that's what we should care about more. The goal should be to refrain from being tickly on the soles of the feet, to endure and tolerate this touch, and to transform our sensorium to something useful. That's how to escape this impasse. Then we could go even further and take it from useful to training. And then we'd have an uncanny spectrum of possibilities. And everyone can surprise him or herself what might come from it in the end.